Jay Leno was born on April 28, 1950 in New Rochelle, New York. His homemaker mother, Catherine, was born in Greenock, Scotland, and came to the United States at age 11. His father, Angelo, was an insurance salesman born in New York to immigrants from Flumeri, Campania, Italy. Leno grew up in Andover, Massachusetts, and graduated from the Andover High School. He obtained a bachelor's degree in speech therapy from Emerson College in Boston, where he started the comedy club in 1973. His older brother, Patrick, was a Vietnam War veteran who became an attorney. Leno made his first appearance on The Tonight Show on March 2, 1977, performing a comedy routine. During the 1970s, he had minor roles in several TV shows and films, first in the 1976 episode JJ in Trouble of Good Times, and the same year in the pilot of Holmes and Yo-Yo. After an uncredited appearance in 1977's Fun with Dick and Jane, he played more prominent roles in 1978 with American Hot Wax and Silver Bears. His other film and television appearances from that period include Almost Heaven, Going Nowhere on One Day at a Time, Americathon, Polyester, The Wild One on Alice, and both Feminine Mistake and Do the Carmine on Laverne and Shirley. His only starring film role was the 1989 direct-to-video Collision Course with Pat Morita. He also appeared numerous times on Late Night with David Letterman. He also appeared on 3 weeks of the short-lived NBC game show Match Game Hollywood Squares Hour in 1983 and 1984. Starting in 1986, Leno was a regular substitute host for Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. In 1992, he replaced Carson as host, amid controversy with David Letterman, who had been hosting Late Night with David Letterman since 1982, which aired after The Tonight Show, and whom many, including Carson himself, expected to be Carson's successor. Now, before we continue on with Leno, we need to talk about David Letterman because, obviously, he plays an integral part of the story that I'm about to talk about.
Now, where exactly do I stand? Do I stand like here? Or is it over here? Or is it just a little bit? Is it about?
Oh, man, what a program we have slapped together at the last minute for you folks here tonight. Anybody in there? Hello? Hey! Now, the fun officially begins.
David Letterman was born in Indianapolis, Indiana on April 12, 1947, and he had two sisters, one older and one younger. His father, Harry Joseph Letterman, was a florist. His mother, Dorothy Letterman, was a church secretary for the Second Presbyterian Church of Indianapolis and was an occasional figure on Letterman's show, usually at holidays and birthdays. Letterman grew up on the north side of Indianapolis in the Broad Ripple area, about 12 miles from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He enjoyed collecting model cars, including racers. In 2000, he told an interviewer for Esquire that while growing up, he admired his father's ability to tell jokes and be the life of a party. Harold Joseph Letterman survived a heart attack at the age of 36 when David was a young boy. The fear of losing his father was consistently with Letterman as he grew up. The elder Letterman died of a second heart attack in 1973 at the age of 57. Letterman attended his hometown Broad Ripples High School and worked as a stock boy at the local Atlas supermarket. According to the Ball State Daily News, he originally wanted to attend Indiana University, but his grades were not good enough, so he instead attended Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. He is a member of the Sigma Chi fraternity and graduated in 1969 from what was then the Department of Radio and Television. A self-described average student, Letterman later endowed a scholarship for what he called C students at Ball State. Though he'd registered for the draft and passed his physical after graduating from college, he was not drafted for service in Vietnam because he received a draft lottery number of 346 out of 366. Letterman began his broadcasting career as an announcer and newscaster at the college student-run radio station WBST, a 10-watt campus station that is now part of Indiana Public Radio. He was fired for treating classical music with irreverence. He then became involved with the founding of another campus station, WAGGO AM 570, now WCRD 91.3. He credits Paul Dixon, host of The Paul Dixon Show, a Cincinnati-based talk show also shown in Indianapolis, while he was growing up, for inspiring his choice of career. I was just out of college in 1969, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, I saw him doing it on TV, and I thought, that's really what I wanted to do. Soon after graduating from Ball State in 1969, Letterman began his career as a radio talk show host on WNTS and on Indianapolis television station WLWI, which changed its call sign to WTHR in 1976, as an anchor and weatherman. He received some attention for his novel on-air delivery, which included congratulating a tropical storm for being upgraded to a hurricane, as well as for predicting hailstones the size of canned hams. Letterman also occasionally reported the weather and the day's very high low temperatures from fictitious cities, 8 inches of snow in Bingri and surrounding areas. On another occasion, he riffed that the state border between Indiana and Ohio had been erased, with a satellite map accidentally omitting it, jokingly attributing it to dirty political dealings. The higher-ups have removed the border between Indiana and Ohio, making it one giant state. Personally, I'm against it. I don't know what to do about it. Letterman also starred on a local kiddie show, making wisecracks as the host of a late-night TV show called Freezer-Dried Movies. He once acted out a scene from Godzilla using plastic dinosaurs. And he hosted a talk show that aired on Saturday mornings called Clover Power, in which he interviewed 4-H members about their projects. In 1971, Letterman also appeared as a pit road reporter for ABC Sports' coverage of the Indianapolis 500, which was his first nationally telecast appearance. He was introduced initially as Chris Economici, but that was then corrected at the end of the interview. Jim McKay announced his name as David Letterman. Letterman interviewed Mario Andretti, who had just crashed out of the race. In 1975, encouraged by his then-wife Michelle and several of his Sigma Chi fraternity brothers, Letterman moved to Los Angeles, California, with the hopes of becoming a comedy writer. He and Michelle packed up their belongings in his pickup truck and headed out west. As of 2012, he still owned the truck. In Los Angeles, he began performing comedy at the Comedy Store. Jimmy Walker saw him on stage with an endorsement from George Miller. Letterman joined a group of comedians whom Walker hired to write jokes for his stand-up act. A group that at the various times included Jay Leno, Paul Mooney, Robert Schimmel, Richard Jeni, Louis Anderson, Elaine Boozler, Byron Allen, Jack Handy, and Steve O'Derrick. By the summer of 1977, Letterman was a writer and regular on the 6-week summer series The Starland Vocal Band Show, broadcasted on CBS. He also hosted a 1977 pilot for a game show called The Riddlers, which was never picked up. Co-starred in the Barry Levinson produced comedy special Peeping Times, which aired in '78, and later that year, Letterman was a cast member on Mary Tyler Moore's variety show, Mary. He also made guest appearances on Mork and Mindy as a parody of S leader Werner Erhard, and appearances on game shows such as the $20,000 Pyramid, The Gong Show, Hollywood Squares, Password Plus, Liars Club, as well as the Canadian cooking show Celebrity Cooks. Talk shows such as 90 Minutes Live and The Mike Douglas Show. He also screen tested for the lead role in the 1980 film Airplane, a role that eventually went to Robert Hayes. Letterman's brand of dry, sarcastic humor caught the attention of scouts for The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, and he was soon a regular guest on the show. He became a favorite of Carson and was a regular guest host for the show beginning in 1978. Letterman credits Carson as the person who influenced his career the most. On June 23, 1980, Letterman was given his very own morning comedy show on NBC, The David Letterman Show. It was originally 90 minutes long, but was shortened to 60 minutes in August of 1980. The show was a critical success, winning 2 Emmy Awards, but was a ratings disappointment and was canceled. The last show aired on October 24th of that year. NBC kept Letterman on its payroll to try him in a different time slot. Late Night with David Letterman debuted on February 1st, 1982, the first guest being Bill Murray. Murray went on to become one of Letterman's most recurring guests, guesting on his later CBS show celebration of his 30th anniversary in late-night TV, which aired on January 31st of 2012, and also on the final CBS show in May of 2015. The show ran on Monday through Fridays at 12:30 a.m. immediately following The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. A Friday night broadcast was added later in 1987. It was seen as edgy and unpredictable, and soon developed a cult following, particularly among college students. Letterman's reputation as an acerbic interviewer was born out of verbal sparring matches with Cher, who even called him an asshole on the show.
Because I thought that I would never want to do this show with you.
Now, why? Now, let's explore this a little. Why? Because you thought I was...
An ass.
They're of course not booing, they're just chanting, Cher, Cher. And of course, for you folks at home who may have missed that, what she said was she thought I was an awfully nice guy.
Other people involved included Shirley MacLaine, Charles Grodin, and Madonna, and the show also featured comedy segments and writing characters in a style heavily influenced by the 1950s and 1960s programs of Steve Allen. The show often featured quirky, genre-mocking regular features, including Stupid Pet Tricks, which had origins on Letterman's morning show.
Hammer, the pit bull, and he's bowling. Just lob one into the crowd. Look out! Come on, dancer. Whoa! Yeah! Put him at the foul line. See what he can do there. Yeah! Oh, my God!
Stupid Human Tricks, dropping various objects off the roof of a 5-story building. Demonstrations of unorthodox clothing, such as a suit made of Alka-Seltzer.
Don't try this at home. I know you have the 900-gallon tank. I know you have the oxygen. I know you have the suit of Alka-Seltzer and a staff of 100 people. No!
Velcro and Sweat, a recurring top 10 list, the Monkey Cam and the Audience Cam, a fictitious letter answering segment, several films by My Dog Bob in which a camera was mounted on Letterman's own dog with comic results, and Small Town News, all of which moved to Letterman with CBS. Other episodes included Letterman using a bullhorn to interrupt a live interview of the Today Show on August 19, 1985, announcing that NBC News president Lawrence Grossman and that he was not wearing any pants. Walking across the hall to Studio 6B, at the time the new studio for WNBC TV, and interrupting Al Roker's weather segments during Live at 5, and staging elevator races complete with commentary by NBC Sports' Bob Costas.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will describe the scene to you, but I am blinded by the mist. It appears that David Letterman has come out of that mist and has crossed the finish line first.
Here's the shot from the late night sky cam. There we are. Now here it goes, working its way across the studio. Ooh, there's the sky cam operator. Go ahead. Zippy, come on out here, buddy.
In one appearance in 1982, Andy Kaufman, who was wearing a neck brace, appeared with professional wrestler Jerry Lawler, who slapped and knocked the comedian to the ground. They later revealed that the incident was staged.
I think you can use some of those words on TV. I'm not...
With Johnny Carson preparing to call it quits in 1992, the natural belief was that David Letterman was a shoo-in to be Johnny's successor on The Tonight Show. But the truth of the matter was, the decision was already made months before Carson even announced his pending retirement. Buckle up, folks. If you don't know the story already, you're in for a treat. It all began back in February of 1991, when Jay Leno's agent at the time, Helen Kushnick, planted the story in the New York Post that NBC wanted to replace Johnny Carson with upstart rising comedian Jay Leno, who had been the permanent guest host of The Tonight Show since 1988. NBC would later deny the story, and it would be later used as a recurring gag on NBC's David Letterman and also on Saturday Night Live. But little did anybody know that Jay Leno had already secured the permanent host job behind closed doors. What had happened was, shortly after that story was leaked, Letterman had signed a new deal with NBC that was pretty much guaranteed that Jay Leno would become the new host of The Tonight Show the Monday after Carson eventually retires. Nobody could tell anybody about this. Carson couldn't know, Letterman couldn't know, only Warren Littlefield, the president of NBC at the time, John Agolia, the NBC executive at the time, and Bob Wright, the CEO of NBC, Kushnick, and Leno knew. NBC believed that Johnny had only a few more years left to his tenure and had time to prepare for a post-Carson late-night world. That all changed, though, on May 22nd of 1991. With an NBC's fall schedule announcement, Johnny Carson made an unexpected surprise appearance to the affiliates. He told a story and let it slip out that he was leaving The Tonight Show 1 year from now. The announcement reportedly left everybody at NBC scrambling as they had nothing prepared beforehand. Johnny Carson threw a grenade in NBC's plans. Carson would later appear on that night's Late Night with David Letterman to make the announcement public, and Letterman and his crew believed that they were still in play for The Tonight Show, only to be told by Agoria and Littlefield that Letterman would be taking over, and it had already been a done deal, leaving Letterman furious, and without many options to what could be done because he was still under contract through 1993. With late-night television entering a whole new era where a younger generation was taking shape thanks to the rise of Arsenio Hall, NBC was desperate to try to keep Leno and Letterman together, even if Letterman felt like he was being betrayed by the network. While Letterman enlisted the help of super agent Michael Ovitz to plot out his next plan, the Leno transition plan took shape, and on May 25, 1992, The New Tonight Show with Jay Leno debuted on NBC.
Live from the NBC studios in Burbank, California, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, featuring Branford Marsalis and The Tonight Show Band. Tonight, Jay welcomes Billy Crystal, the music of Shanice, and economic correspondent Robert Krolwich. I'm Ed Hall. And now, Jay Leno.
In 30 years.
Despite Leno landing The Tonight Show, the controversy still continued into Leno's first year, mostly associating with Helen Kushnick, who as the executive producer of the show, had more creative control on how the show would go, no matter how controversial it was. It was clear she had some form of vendetta with Johnny Carson, to the point that on Leno's first show, there was absolutely no tribute to Carson. That was a decision strictly on Kushnick. Kushnick's power over the show went above out of control when during the 1992 Republican National Convention, a live Tonight Show episode was canceled when Kushnick was so angry that a speech by former President Ronald Reagan went on too long. She sent the audience home 30 minutes before the live show was set to go on the air, leaving NBC furious. A rerun was later aired that night, but it was clear that she was pushing her luck. The final nail in the coffin for Kushnick was 4 months into the new Leno Tonight Show, when she would bar guests appearing on the show if they were appearing on other shows, which led NBC to give Jay and Helen an ultimatum. Either Helen leaves the show, or Jay goes with her. For Jay, the decision was much tougher to handle, as he and Helen were close friends, and Leno had been by her side even at her worst. He eventually decided to cut ties with Kushnick, and she was let go not long after. Once again, it seemed like the dark days were behind for Jay, but unfortunately, if only that was the case, because Letterman was coming back into the fold again. You see, by the end of 1992, Michael Ovitz was able to allow for lenient terms to negotiate with other networks for Letterman, and CBS became a top contender, as they had been trying to get back into the late-night game for years after putting all of its chips in one basket for Pat Sajak back in 1989. Which didn't end out working well. They even tried to offer Jay Leno a late-night show in 1990 with a $6 million payday before he got The Tonight Show. Letterman had a deal with CBS in place, but Letterman was still on the hope that he would get The Tonight Show, especially with rumors of NBC being unhappy with Leno's rating performance as The Tonight Show host. Now, if you've ever read the book The Late Shift or even saw the movie, you know there's a notable scene in there where Jay Leno supposedly secretly listened into a meeting of NBC executives talking about the future of his job while he was in the broom closet. Supposedly using that as a tactic to keep his job, but again, that's just from the book in general, and we don't know how fabricated that truly is, but I mean, it's not that hard to believe, honestly, when you really think about it. So not too long afterward, NBC did make its final offer to Letterman, which did indeed allow him to get The Tonight Show. Eventually. Sort of. It was a complicated issue. The deal was that NBC would allow Jay Leno to finish out his contract, which ran through May of 1994. And then NBC would give Leno The Tonight Show after that. Keep in mind, though, this was done in January of 1993, so in essential, NBC is giving Jay Leno a year and a half to turn The Tonight Show into a success, and had Letterman agreed to said deal, there was no real guarantee he would get The Tonight Show, and he would be stuck in his current predicament. Letterman wanted to keep his hopes of getting The Tonight Show, but when even his producer and longtime Tonight Show head Peter Lasalle told him that he wouldn't be getting the Johnny Carson Tonight Show, he'd be getting the Jay Leno Tonight Show, and doing to Jay what NBC was doing to him, he really had to think about his choices of what he had to do next. He was still very hesitant to accept the CBS offer, and then he made one final call to Johnny Carson himself and asked Carson what he should do. Carson said he should accept the CBS offer, and thus on January 14th, 1993, the final decision was made.
I spoke to Mr. Carson on Sunday. What did he say? He said, "Stop calling me." Alex and I are playing tennis. Stop bothering me. Yes, there have been points in my life when I have turned to Johnny Carson for advice. And the reason I am standing here, there have been many, many people in my life who have been helpful and supportive and encouraging to me. And I would have to think that the most important figure has been Johnny Carson. The man has been encouraging and helpful to me in ways that he doesn't know I know about. He has, in my career, done things not for any open gratitude or any favors returned. He has been so helpful to me and such a role model for me that I will never be able to repay the kindness to the man.
Dave, are you going to kick Jay Leno's ass, and what do you think will happen to Arsenio in the upcoming late night battle?
I'm going to kick your ass. That's what I'm going to do, buddy. Me and Larry, down there, all over you. Like a cheap suit, pal. You're dead meat, right, Larry? Take it. You loosen him up, I'll finish him off. You know, it's silly to say things like that, and you probably feel silly now. No, the only kind of strategy we've ever used is we worry about ourselves. We worry about our show. We concentrate on doing the best show we can possibly do, and all of that other stuff seems to take care of itself. I know that it's going to be difficult. I know we have some obstacles. I think our goal, I think everybody up here just it wants us to be competitive. So I would not say we're in business right now to kick anybody's ass.
How do you feel about guests coming on your show for the next few months and bringing up your deal and your move?
I think that we'll grow weary of that pretty soon. I think you folks have grown tired of it already. So I don't see that as a problem.
What about Paul? Can he come along with the deal?
Oh, Paul. What, have you got a little extra for Paul? No, absolutely. Paul Schaefer, I've said this before, Paul Schaefer and the band Night In and Night Out is the best thing about our television program, and I would not have considered any change unless Paul was eager and happy and willing to go with us. Okay, that's about it, eh? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Nice chatting with you.
And
David Letterman would move to CBS at 11:30 to start a new late-night franchise with a 3-year deal worth $14 million, which included ownership of the show and at the time making him one of the richest men in TV history. Jay Leno would stay put as the host of The Tonight Show on NBC, and thus the first official late-night war was underway. David Letterman's last late night was broadcasted on June 25th, 1993, and on August 30th of that year, The Late Show with David Letterman premiered on CBS, and thus the war was on. And believe it or not, David Letterman won it first. For the first 2 years, David Letterman consistently outdid Jay Leno in the ratings, especially considering how CBS was not the biggest rating draw back in the day compared to how it is now. And even the year afterward, when CBS lost the NFL to Fox and a number of CBS affiliates became Fox affiliates, it was a pretty big deal for Letterman to be the success that he was in that time slot. Jay Leno struggled at first, but then came the summer of 1995, where one significant event changed the trajectory of The Tonight Show with Jay Leno forever.
Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Hugh Grant.
Let me start with question number one. What the hell were you thinking? I must say, I admire your honoring the commitment.
Well, the fact is, I owe it to the studio, and the other thing is that although I've never been one to, blow my own trumpet, as they say, I think this is. This is a funny film.
On July 10th, 1995, Hugh Grant appeared in public for the first time after his arrest on lewd conduct charges the previous month. Leno famously asked him, "What the hell were you thinking?" In response, Grant told Leno, "I think you know in life what's a good thing to do and what's a bad thing, and I did a bad thing, and there you have it." The appearance was the first episode in which Leno beat CBS rival David Letterman. That one episode solidified The Tonight Show's rating success going forward, and the show would remain the highest-rated late-night show throughout the course of Leno's tenure. The show follows an established six-piece format. After the announcer announces the opening credits for the show, the first segment is a 10-minute monologue by Leno with jokes about current events and brief comedy sketches occasionally mixed in. The second segment is a full comedy sketch, such as a mini-documentary by a Tonight Show correspondent, Ross the Intern or Mikey Day, or a trademark of Leno, such as Headlines. The first guest appears, where the interview is divided into two segments, then followed by an interview with the second guest in the fifth segment. The sixth and final segment is typically a performance by a musical guest or stand-up comedian. Immediately following the last performance segment, Leno walks on camera to thank the performers, bid farewell to the audience, and recommends watching Late Night, which immediately follows The Tonight Show. As the closing credits roll on screen, the closing theme, composed by band leaders, play the show off the air. Branford Marsalis was the original band leader of the show from 1992 to 1995, leaving the show after feeling displeased with his role on the show, which he called being an ass-kisser. Kevin Eubanks, who had been the guitarist in Marsalis' band, moved up to bandleader, forming Kevin Eubanks and The Tonight Show Band, and remained with them until 2010. He left to concentrate on his music, adding that his leaving was not provoked by any problems with Leno or NBC. Eubanks would later reunite with Leno as co-host of Leno's version of You Bet Your Life in 2020. Ed Hall served as an announcer on The Tonight Show from 1992 until 2004. He would occasionally appear in sketches during the opening monologue, and the skits often include slapstick injuries to Hall by using a stunt double, dummy, or film clip, such as vehicles running him over in the studio parking lot. Unlike his predecessors on Tonight, Hall did not serve as a sidekick for Leno during his tenure on Leno's incarnation of The Tonight Show. He was controversially replaced in 2004 by The Howard Stern Show's John Melendez, in which many perceived as a thinly veiled attempt to attract a younger demographic and nonsensical, considering his stuttering moniker. The hiring of Melendez was actually carried out by Leno without Stern's knowledge, prompting a rift between Stern and Leno. Stern launched into tirades on the show for many weeks of saying Leno was ripping him off, citing previously lifted material from his show such as jaywalking, ripping off Stern's homeless game, for example, stating to an 18 to 25-year-old male, Jay Leno is gay. He might as well put a dress on. Since the move to the Jay Leno Show, Melendez was replaced as announcer but remained on the writing staff. Wally Wingard would be the only off-camera announcer for Letterman's second Tonight tenure, carrying over his duties from the Jay Leno Show. Aside from Hugh Grant's notable appearance, the Jay Leno Tonight Show has had a number of other notable moments throughout its history. On May 20th, 1993, the Tonight Show traveled to the Bull and Finch pub in Boston, Massachusetts to celebrate the final episode of Cheers. It's the first time the Tonight Show with Jay Leno was taped on the road. On May 9th of 1994, Bobcat Goldthwait appeared, where he set the guest chair on fire. Leno threw a cup of coffee on there and told Bobcat to sit down in it. Later that August, Leno eulogized his father, who had recently died. After his monologue, Leno sat behind his desk and told the audience about his father's life and how his father had supported him in his career. Leno noted the moment when, upon Carson's disapproval at Leno becoming his successor, his father had encouraged him and told him to fight the good fight. Leno ended the tribute saying, "You know, it is really lonely at the top. You have no idea, but we'll fight the good fight, Pop." On November 30th, 1995, Howard Stern, who had made two highly rated appearances in 92 and 93, appeared with bikini-clad porn stars Nikki Tyler and Jamie Lindenmulder to attempt the Tonight Show's first lesbian kiss, encouraging Leno to spank one of them. Stern and the women remained during Siskel and Ebert's segment, which he began to suck one of their toes to raucous applause and behavior from the crowd. Leno was visibly uncomfortable during both segments, reportedly turned Stern, "It will all be edited out," and hastily trying to interview Siskel and Ebert while the crowd went wild at Stern's antics. Leno ended the show early by walking off the air, which was edited out when it aired a few hours later, as revealed by Stern when he went on the air the following morning. Despite the situation, Leno called into the show that morning claiming Stern had gone beyond the acceptable standards. Stern said Leno should not be so uptight and had a real reaction to the situation, which was great. Stern recounted Leno had yelled at his producer, saying Stern had shit in his house. I think that's what it says, but I'm just reading it off of the prompt here. And supposedly grabbed his crotch and yelled, "Pussy, pussy, pussy, that's all it is" with Howard, which Leno denied but agreed he had been angered by Stern. On March 13th of 2000, New York Giants cornerback Jason Sehorn came on stage during Leno's interview with his girlfriend, Law & Order star Angie Harmon, surprising her by proposing in front of Jay, the audience and musical guest Elton John. Harmon tearfully said yes, and Elton performed after the break. One night later in the monologue, Leno cracked up the audience by saying that the episode was like every date he had in college. The pretty girl ran off with the football player, and I was left alone listening to Elton John.
Please welcome the lovely Angie Harmon.
But yes, I'm dating.
Can I ask you his name? Can I ask you what he does?
No.
Really? I mean, what if he wanted to come out? If I say his name, let's see if he comes out.
Okay.
Okay. His name is Jason Sehorn. He plays with the New York Giants. Jason, are you there? Good guy. How are you? Good. Did you want to?
Yeah.
Hi. What are you doing?
You marry me.
Jason. Oh my God. Baby. Oh.
Look at that ring. Even Elton is jealous.
And?
Is that a yes? Like last night, sitting there with Angie, it was like my entire high school experience. I'm talking to the most beautiful girl in the room. A football player walks in, steals her away. I end up by myself listening to Elton John. It was the same thing. It was just like high school. Just like high school.
In September of 2000, with California in an energy crisis that forced blackouts, Leno did an episode in the dark using only candles and flashlights known as The Tonight Show Unplugged. Following the September 11th attacks, The Tonight Show was off the air for about a week, as were most similar programs. The first post-9/11 episode began with a still image of an American flag and a subdued opening without the usual opening credits. Leno's monologue paid tribute to those who lost their lives and to firefighters, police, and rescue workers across the U.S. Leno had questioned whether a show that would regularly poke fun at the government could continue after the attacks, but in his monologue, he explained that he also saw the show as a respite from the grim news of the world, akin to a cookie or a glass of lemonade handed to a firefighter. He also told the story about himself as a 12-year-old Boy Scout, which Leno said he was not a very good one to begin with, as dyslexia. His scoutmaster gave him the task of being the cheermaster of the troop, in which Leno told jokes to the troops to keep their spirits up. Senator John McCain and the musical guests Crosby, Stills, and Nash were featured guests. Leno also organized an auction for a Harley-Davidson motorcycle signed by celebrities. He signed his name on stage, with the proceeds going to the 9/11 support organizations. For an extended period after the attack, a short clip of a large American flag waving was shown in between the announcement of the musical guests and Leno's introduction during the opening monologue. On May 12, 2003, Katie Couric hosted The Tonight Show for a day, as Jay Leno had hosted The Today Show earlier in the day. Couric's guests on that night's show were Mike Myers, Simon Cowell, and Robbie Williams. On August 6, 2003, actor Arnold Schwarzenegger appeared on The Tonight Show and confirmed he will be running against California Governor Gray Davis for the 2003 California gubernatorial recall election. Schwarzenegger won that election on October 7th. On January 24, 2005, Leno had a special episode that paid tribute to Tonight Show predecessor Johnny Carson, who had died the day before. During the opening credits, the guests of that show were simply announced using pictures from where they were on Carson's Tonight Show, and the monologue simply gave condolence to Carson. There were no segments used, however. Leno played clips from The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson before commercials. All the guests were people who had worked with Carson and had been on the show, including Ed McMahon, Drew Carey, Don Rickles, and Bob Newhart. On July 20th, 2006, as Colin Farrell was being interviewed by Leno, Farrell's stalker, Desiree Bradford, evaded security, walked on stage as cameras were rolling, confronted Farrell, and threw her book on Leno's desk. In front of a silent, stunned audience, Farrell escorted her off the stage himself, told the camera crew to stop filming, and handed her over to security. As Bradford was led out of the studio, she shouted, "I'll see you in court." Farrell's response was simply, "Darling, you're insane." Outside the studio, NBC security handed her to Burbank police, who eventually released her. While waiting to be filming again, a shocked Leno sarcastically called for a round of applause for NBC security from the audience. After Farrell apologized to the audience, describing Bradford as "my first stalker," the show then continued filming, and the incident was edited out of the broadcast airing that night. Farrell later requested a restraining order in court against Bradford. On July 24, 2007, the monologue was animated with Homer Simpson at the front. Simpson gave a short monologue to the audience and was kicked out by Leno. This was a sketch promoting the Simpsons movie, which was coming out in about 3 days afterwards. On January 2, 2008, The Tonight Show, along with Jimmy Kimmel Live and Late Night with Conan O'Brien, returned to air without writers, with the WGA still on strike. It was a response to David Letterman's production company, Worldwide Pants, and CBS Paramount Television, with the WGA to allow Late Show with David Letterman and The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson to return with writers. Leno's guest that night was Republican presidential candidate Mike Huckabee, who was criticized for crossing the WGA picket line to appear on the show. Huckabee would go on to win the Iowa caucuses the very next day. On June 13, 2008, Leno delivered the news of Tim Russerd's death to his audience during his monologue. Tim Russerd, of course, was the host of Meet the Press at the time, and set aside some time in it to remember his old colleague. Leno then stated that he would continue the show as normal afterwards. Finally, on March 19, 2009, Barack Obama appeared on the show. It marked the first time that a sitting president of the United States appeared on a late-night talk show. President Obama came under fire for a remark made about the Special Olympics, which he made in reference to Leno's congratulations to Obama's low bowling score. Jay Leno was consistently the most well-known late-night host throughout his original 17-year run, and was a top ratings performer and moneymaker for NBC. But NBC also had other talents in late night that were getting attention from other networks in the early 2000s. And in order for NBC to avoid another repeat of the controversial transition from Johnny Carson to Jay Leno, NBC decided to try to not repeat the same thing with the man who was assigned the next opportunity to host The Tonight Show, who had been a reliable draw of the network ever since his debut in 1993. And their plan was for a much smoother, much more calmer transition this time around. And it worked. NBC didn't have the same controversial transition from one host to another like in 1992. It somehow got even worse than that.
Good luck next week, my friend.
Jay, thank you for everything.
All the best.
What they've really accomplished in this move is, a peaceful transition of power, which is rare in television.